They said afterward that the intelligence arrived the way all terrible truths arrive on death worlds, not with thunder, but with a voice. A single voice, carrying what it had memorized because the act of transmitting it would have been a death sentence. Tessith Karran had walked 3 relay nodes to reach Serethi Voss. She had not slept. She had not eaten. She spoke the numbers to Veylan in a corridor that smelled of mineral paste and recycled air, and Veylan had passed them forward through the chain, and now they sat in the room where Serethi waited, and the room had gone very quiet. The Iron Tally armada was not days away, it was hours, and the seed, beneath their feet, was no longer keeping to any timeline anyone had projected. Serethi Voss stood in the relay chamber carved into dust metallite rock and listened to Tessith recite what she had memorized. The young woman's grey-blue eyes were flat with exhaustion, her auburn braids fraying at the edges, her ink-stained fingers pressing the leather notation tablet against her sternum as if she could push the numbers back inside herself. She spoke them anyway. Fleet count, formation class, approach vector, estimated arrival. Serethi did not move. The binding scars at the base of her skull caught the amber emergency light and glowed faintly, and her pale grey eyes reflected nothing but the numbers. Then she turned and walked out of the room, and the war began. Veylan was already at the secondary terminal when she reached the command junction, his long ink-stained fingers moving across a flat panel of progenitor thread circuitry, his dark eyes tracking the relay chain's signal status. He did not look up. He told her the chain had held. He told her the chain would not hold a second transmission. Whatever she needed to say to the fleet, she had one pass. Serethi looked at the signal map and understood that she was not commanding a coalition. She was commanding a collection of people who had agreed, under different circumstances, to stand in approximately the same direction. She would have to make that mean something before Drazen Fell's ships resolved out of starfall above them. On the command deck of her flagship, Empress Regent Lysara stood at the viewport and watched dust turn below her, rust orange and scarred, a world that had been dying for 3 centuries. The luminous threads of her carbon weave mantle mapped the star systems still under her protection, and the dark patches where systems had gone silent were visible if you knew where to look. She had been watching dust for an hour. Her right hand trembled against the viewport glass. She pressed it flat and held it there. When Serethi's voice came through the relay, Lysara listened without interrupting. She had learned, somewhere between the coup she crushed and the fleet battle she won without progenitor weapons, that the most useful thing a commander can do in the first 30 seconds of a crisis briefing is listen. Serethi told her the formation she needed. She told her the timeline. She told her that the refugee fleet was the outer line because it was the largest and the most expendable in the coalition's cold arithmetic, and she was sorry. Lysara said she understood. She walked to her command console, pressed her trembling hand flat against its surface, and gave the order to form up. She did not say she forgave the arithmetic. In the choir station 3 decks below the Coalition's lead warship, Vex Karran stood at her elevated terminal and watched the relay indicators blink in asymmetric green. The reconstituted network was 47 nodes. It had been 9 nodes 6 weeks ago. She had built the other 38 from former choir operatives who had gone to ground when House Thyros dissolved, from Ash Singer relay contacts Serethi had introduced her to, and from 3 trading house communications officers who had defected when the compact's true methods became clear. It was not a network. It was a collection of people who had decided to trust each other at the worst possible moment. Vex rolled her sleeves precisely twice, checked the sidearm at the small of her back without drawing it, and began the activation sequence. She sent the formation data simultaneously to every coalition ship, every refugee vessel in Lysara's fleet, and every Ashsinger relay station within range of Dust's orbit. The network held. Kael'thyrus was already in the tunnels when the formation order came through. He had gone down into the Warrens an hour before Tessith's intelligence arrived, because he had learned to read the way Dust shook, and Dust had been shaking differently for the past 6 hours. He stood in a junction corridor lit by amber emergency strips, his prosthetic matte black left hand pressed flat against the metallite wall, feeling the vibration that came from below rather than above. The seed was speaking in the only language it had, pressure and heat, and the slow grinding of a machine that had been waiting 12 centuries to do what it was built for. Halia Vaughn was 3 junctions deeper, organising the evacuation columns with the same brutal efficiency she had used to organise the Jessad resistance. Her prosthetic stump, wrapped in salvaged progenitor thread irrigation cabling, pointed down the main tunnel as she directed the flow of bodies. Families with bundled salvage, Ashsingers clutching data chip necklaces, children who had never seen the surface and were about to. She had 12,000 people to move through tunnels that were losing structural integrity from the bottom up. She had 4 functional evacuation shafts, and one that had partially collapsed an hour ago and might be usable if someone with engineering sense and no fear of small spaces was willing to go in first. She went in first. Dr. Iolan Martz was in the deepest accessible approach corridor to the seed chamber when the acceleration data came through her diagnostic lenses. She had been monitoring the seed's pulse rate for 3 days, watching the concentric rings of glowing script on the control interface rotate faster and faster in the blue-white light. She read the new numbers twice. The spectral overlays in her augmented lenses shifted through 3 diagnostic spectra before settling. She pressed the corroded data chip at her throat between 2 fingers. Her dead colleague's research, irrelevant now but present, and opened a channel to Serethi. She gave her the number, not a range, not an estimate, a number. The time remaining before the seed's countdown crossed the threshold of no return, the point at which the terraforming engine would begin its activation sequence, whether anyone wanted it to or not. The number was smaller than anyone had planned for. Serethi received Iolan's number in the command junction and did not repeat it aloud. She looked at Veylan, who had heard it through the open channel, and his ink-stained fingers went still for the first time since she had known him. Then they started moving again. She looked at the formation map Vex had pushed to every terminal in the network. Lysara's refugee fleet spreading into the outer defensive arc, the coalition warships tightening into the inner line, the choir relay nodes blinking green across the orbital grid. It was not enough. It was what they had. She began giving orders. The evacuation shafts were the first priority. The formation was the second. The seed's countdown was the clock that made both of them simultaneously urgent and impossible. She gave the orders anyway, because the alternative was to give nothing, and 12,000 people were moving through tunnels that were cracking apart beneath them. And the armada was coming, and the planet was waking up, and someone had to stand at the center of all of it and choose. In the amber-lit warrens, the walls shook. Condensation streaked orange-brown down the metallite as the deep vibrations intensified. Halia Vaughn emerged from the partially collapsed shaft with dust in her braid and a route mapped in her head, and she turned to the column of people waiting behind her and told them to move. They moved. Children carried by adults who were themselves carrying everything they owned. Ashsingers walking with their data chip necklaces clutched in both hands, the chips clicking against each other in the rhythm of their steps. Old people who had lived their entire lives in these warrens and were now walking out of them for the first time. The tunnels shook, the amber strips flickered, the walls sweated, the people moved. Kyle found Halia at the junction where the main evacuation route crossed the secondary shaft access. And they stood together for 30 seconds, in the noise and the dust and the shaking, and he told her the outer shafts were clear to the surface. She told him the inner column was moving, but the third shaft was going to fail in under an hour. He looked at the column of people and calculated without speaking. He told her he would take the third shaft. She did not argue. She turned back to the column and kept moving. Above the surface of dust, the coalition's defensive formation was taking shape in the cold dark. Lysara's refugee fleet, 47 vessels of varying class and condition, their hulls patched and their weapons modest, spread into the outer arc as ordered, each ship finding its position in the formation data Vex had pushed through the network. The coalition warships held the inner line, tighter and harder, their weapons charged, and their commanders watching the approach vector Tessith's intelligence had identified. Vex Karran stood at her terminal and watched the formation resolve on her display, node by node, ship by ship, the green indicators confirming each vessel's position. The network held. She did not allow herself to feel relief. Relief was for after. On Lysara's command deck, the Regent's mantle caught the light from the viewport, its luminous threads mapping the formation in real time. Each coalition ship a bright point, each refugee vessel a dimmer one, the whole pattern spreading across the rust-orange curve of dust below like a net being cast over something enormous. Lysara watched the formation complete and felt the tremor in her right hand move up her arm. She pressed it flat against the console and watched the approach vector. She was not afraid of the armada. She had stopped being afraid of things she could not prevent. She was afraid of the 12,000 people still in the tunnels below her, and she let that fear sharpen her into something useful. In the deepest accessible corridor above the seed chamber, E11 Mars watched the blue-white light pulse through the geometric seams in the progenitor substrate and updated her timeline. The number had not changed. It had only become more real. Halia's column reached the surface egress, a corroded pressure hatch set into the metallite floor of a dome cluster that had been decommissioned for 6 years. And she pushed it open, and the sulphurous air of dust's surface hit her like a fist. She stepped out anyway. She turned and helped the first person through, and then the next, and then the next, and the column began emerging into the rust-orange light of a world that was about to become something none of them had words for. On the sensors of every ship in the Coalition's defensive formation, the approach vector lit up simultaneously. Vex Karran saw it first. The transit shimmer that precedes starfall emergence. A ripple in the sensor field that meant something very large was about to be very close. She opened the network-wide channel and said one word. The word was now. Drazen Fell's armada came out of starfall in staggered columns, matte black composite warships with the compact's interlocking rings. Sigil etched in silver at their sterns, their running lights minimal, their formation precise and enormous. Dozens of vessels resolving from transit shimmer into hard silhouettes against the stars above dust. They were exactly where Tessith's intelligence had said they would be. Serethi Voss stood at the junction where the command terminal met the main evacuation route and watched the armada resolve on the display above her. The binding scars at the base of her skull glowed brighter than they had in months, responding to the seed's pulse below her and the fleet above her, and the 12,000 people moving through the tunnels around her. She looked at the display for a long moment. Then she looked at the evacuation status. Then she looked at the formation map. The formation was set. The evacuation was moving. The armada was here. And beneath her feet, in a chamber that smelled of rain, the seed was counting down towards something that had not happened on this world in 12 centuries. She was not afraid. She had been born on this planet's bones, and she had learned in the years since Marin whispered the first coordinates to her that the bones of a dead world are not a grave. They are a foundation. She opened the coalition-wide channel and began to speak.